that was a rough loss to take for the Jazz. The Jazz, they definitely had that game to win. It was theirs to win. There's just several steps along the way that the Jazz really messed up and lost their chance, particularly in the first half. In the second half, it was a little better, but we can dig into that. For those of you who haven't watched the Jazz, they lost barely. I think it was by 5 points. By 5 points to the Timberwolves. Right in the final seconds, they had a chance to inbound the ball. They were down by 3. And they had a 5-second violation called, so they turned the ball over without getting the chance to get a shot up. Obviously, the Jazz fouled at that point. That put the Timberwolves hit both their free throws, and the Jazz didn't score after that. So that's why they lost by 5. It was just a silly mistake there at the end. Obviously, we can dig deeper into that. They should know their inbound plays better and know how to get the ball in that case. But hopefully this is a mistake. This is a mistake early on in the season, so you don't want to dig into it too much, especially now that they've made this mistake this season. I'm sure they're going to really hit those hard in practices, really go over the inbound plays to make sure that if they're in that situation again, that's not going to happen. So at least they can get the ball inbounds and have a chance for a shot. Last episode, or not last episode, but a few videos ago, I made the prediction that the Jazz would start off 8-2 in their first 10 games. This has made it very difficult for my prediction to be to actually happen. So if the Jazz do go 8-2, that will be huge, because that means they have the rest of their games in the 10-game span are probably tougher than the Timberwolves. So they really have to come ready to play in every game in order for that to happen. So it's not likely that will happen, but I'm not saying it's the end of the world yet just because they lost to the Timberwolves. Actually, about a month, maybe 2 months ago, I said in one of our videos that I thought the Timberwolves were a dark horse candidate to really make a run for the playoffs and be a competitive team. Obviously, they're not built as well as a lot of other teams in the West, but I think a lot of people aren't considering DAngelo Russell as a big of an ad as he will be this season. Obviously, he played for them a little last season, but that was really, it didn't really matter at that point. And yeah, so this team with Cat and DAngelo Russell looked really good against the Jazz. And Karl-Anthony Towns, he made it that down the stretch, it was a lot harder for the Jazz to come back. There were a couple plays where DAngelo Russell was playing ISO, and he was he was in that range where he could either drive, he could take a step back, or he could pull up for a mid-range jumper. And in the two cases that I'm thinking of, he pulled up for a mid-range and hit a tough jumper both times. But in this case, he was his man was guarding him, and Gobert came off Karl-Anthony Towns a little bit to guard DAngelo Russell to help play that help defense. And Karl-Anthony Towns, he didn't have great stats, but because last season he was a 40% shooter from the three-point arc, Rudy Gobert couldn't play help defense off of him because the second Rudy comes off of Cat goes out to the three-point line, so then Rudy has to go back and guard Karl-Anthony Towns, which made it possible for DAngelo Russell to hit those 2 mid-range jumpers down the stretch, which made it a lot tougher for the Jazz to really make their comeback. But let's dig into what was going wrong with the Jazz. I already touched on some points. I'll touch on what I think were some of the main problems that I saw, and then we can dig into some bright flashes that we can see for the future. So in the first game against the Trailblazers and in this game, we saw the Jazz come out to a slow start. I feel like it was less of an issue this game, particularly because after in the first quarter, it was a lot closer than it seemed. I think the Timberwolves beat them out by 6 points, which isn't that big of a deal. And it was kind of back and forth in that first quarter. So it was really the second quarter that they fell apart. And what I was seeing is it was just sloppy basketball all around. Um, the like when the Jazz were on offense, they'd miss a shot. They wouldn't box out on to get that offensive board, which isn't a big deal because it is a strategy where you just kind of let the other team get the defensive rebounds because you get back on defense to stop any transition, which that's one strategy depending on who you're playing. Coach may play that way. But the Jazz wouldn't box out, and then they weren't getting back on transition, which gave the Timberwolves a lot of easy baskets on the other end. So that's something that I noticed. That should be a quick fix. You either need to you have Rudy Gobert, so he can out rebound probably most people on the Timberwolves. He isn't as big as Karl Anthony Towns, but he's a lot taller, so and a lot longer. He has a longer wingspan. At least that's what it looks like. I don't know the numbers, but that's what it would look like on the court. So that should be an easy fix. It's a concern though if that continues throughout the season. The Jazz have a lot of tough games, especially here in the beginning part of the season. So if they don't fix that quick, they could have a pretty bad record if they're giving away that many points every game in transition. Another thing that concerned me was Donovan Mitchell. He finished the game with over 20 points, but at the end of the first half, he only had 4. And Donovan Mitchell, he is the leader of this team. He should be particularly on offense. If the offense isn't going well, he should be the guy they go to, and he should take charge and take over. He didn't. He started doing that towards the end when it came down to they were down by 8-10 points with like 3 or 4 minutes left, and they really needed to gain, cut that lead down so they would have a chance of winning. But if he kind of had that mindset, especially in the first half when they were down by a little bit and it wasn't crunch time, that could have changed the game a lot. And that's not just because Donovan Mitchell is the best scorer on the team, but it's because when you have someone like Donovan Mitchell where he is explosive, he comes from the outside and it's a snap of a finger and he's down ready to score right in the paint. And that sucks the defense in because he's dangerous. And the cool thing I love having the ball in Mitchell's hand and having him drive because that sucks the defense in, which allows him to pass it out to the shooters, which the Jazz, they only got a little over 33s up this game compared to 50 against the Trailblazers. And I think that's part of the reason is Donovan Mitchell wasn't really being as aggressive as he could be. Another thing when Mitchell drives in, he has Gobert right there next to the rim. So if they stop Mitchell, he has a lob threat right there. Or if they stop Mitchell and Gobert, then he has probably one or two open guys on the perimeter that if he gets it out to them, they probably have an open 3. If not, it resets a play. And then if they run that early in the shot clock, then they have a chance to do something else there. So I want to see more of Mitchell being aggressive in the first half in the games coming up. So I'm just checking my notes. Some good things that I was seeing were Conley. He came out solid. He wasn't like amazing in the first half, but he did his part. That was a huge question mark. A lot of people outside of Utah were really worried about Conley because he didn't have a great start last season. I don't think they were really paying attention to how he kind of fixed it towards the end of the season and in the playoffs and the bubble. He was looking a lot better. But I liked what I saw from Conley. He was doing great. Clarkson, he did a solid job he found a way to really get into the paint and just get really easy baby hooks and little floaters down there. And he didn't really he made it look easy. He didn't have to take tough shots. All of his shots were easy, and he got his, I think, 23 points almost exclusively down in the paint. He had a couple jumpers, but I don't know what the Timberwolves defense was doing. So for some reason, when Clarkson had the ball, the spacing was great, but other times the spacing was really bad. That's why the Jazz couldn't get off all those threes. So those are some good things to pull out of it. I think the mistakes that the Jazz made aren't Like, they're not going to ruin the Jazz this season. They should be things that can be ironed out pretty quickly. The Jazz have some veterans. They're a pretty veteran-heavy team. So they should iron out some of the major things pretty quickly. One more thing that really killed it, I think I might have touched on this at the beginning, but the Jazz, they made some stupid passes this game. Particularly the ones that I'm really remembering, I think most of them were on Ingles. I may be remembering that wrong, but all of the ones that I am remembering right now were passes to Gobert, and they were trying to force the ball to Gobert, and they broadcasted the pass. It's one of those things where when you play basketball, the first thing they teach you to do is to dribble without looking at the basketball. The next thing they teach you to do is when you pass, you don't like tell the defense with your eyes where you're going to pass. And I saw some of that. Like, kudos to the Timberwolves defense, because it's not like they were being lazy. They were aggressive on that, and that gave them more points in the transition. But the Jazz really need to not force anything. They can't broadcast what they're doing. And they really need to realize that they have more than one option to pass and not get themselves trapped in those situations. So really, I think the Jazz definitely would have won this if they didn't make some of those stupid passes, if they were a little smarter with the basketball when they were on offense. If Mitchell was a little more aggressive, particularly in the first half, and that would have just allowed the Jazz's offense to be more open and spread, and that would have fixed the slow start issue as well. So, and even with all these issues, it's not like this was a blowout. It is disappointing because the Jazz should have won this game, but it came down to the wire. The Jazz had one mistake at the end. They couldn't get the ball in within 5 seconds. I'm guessing there wasn't a timeout available. I didn't look into that, but Quinn Snyder would have taken that timeout if it came to that. So the Jazz have some stuff to fix, but they fought hard at the end. I'm proud of them for that, and I'm looking forward to next game. It should be good. The Jazz will still be fun to watch. They just let one slip early, the second game of the season, which is disappointing. But thanks for tuning in. If you like this video, please hit the like button. It means a lot. And subscribe for regular Jazz content. We're going to be trying to give you post-game reviews and some previews for most every game this season, if not every few games. So if you want that Jazz content and those Utah Jazz videos, hit that subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss anything. Thanks for tuning in.